I'm talking today to Melony Slack, who lives in Lambourne and is a representative for the National Refuge charity that supports mainly women who are experiencing domestic abuse. Just as a way of context, Melony sadly, tragically lost her sister-in-law to domestic violence, to a violent partner, about 10 years ago, and has been campaigning ever since to help charities and to help get the law improved and bills passed to strengthen the police's response to domestic violence cases. So welcome, Melony.
Hello.
Obviously at this time, this extraordinary time, it's tough enough for all of us, but for anybody in an abusive relationship, it must be hell on earth at the moment.
It must be. My sister-in-law Rachel's case is particularly in my mind, our minds at the moment, because and living in a rural valley as we do, Lambourne Valley, Rachel lived in a rural village in Derbyshire, and isolation was a factor in her case.
Okay.
Her ex-partner, who was the father of her toddler, who killed her and her toddler and then also committed suicide at the scene, he had been suffering some mental illness and depression, although it was debatable. But Rachel had become more isolated in trying to support him and look after her child, and she was pregnant again by a new partner. She didn't know who to turn to. She was being controlled by her ex-partner. He knew exactly which buttons to press. And she felt as though she couldn't, if she spoke to anybody, she was frightened of what he might do, even though he said he couldn't leave his house. He did. He used to stalk her.
So they weren't living together.
They weren't actually living together, but he spent a lot of time with her, and she felt, because she wanted to keep. Well, she used to say it was because she wanted to keep him in her toddler son's life, being his dad. But he would use that and to come round, and she would feel like she wasn't able to go out. She was on her own. She didn't know who to. She thought she was going a bit crazy. He would say things, and she would agree with him. But she realised how manipulative and controlling he'd become, controlling how much she spent, if she spent anything. I mean, this was a continuation of the controlling relationship, the abusive relationship before she became isolated at home and not able to go out. And it just brings to mind the current situation. If you have it can be said that most people, we would believe that with these extraordinary circumstances, it's people's reaction to being cooped up and losing the plot and breaking under extraordinary circumstances. But it's more of the fact that abusive partners who are already abusive in more subtle ways have behave when there's no one around and they're not in public view. So it could be anything from somebody who doesn't like you to, when you go shopping, they want to know exactly when you're going to be back, anything that you deviate from the list, who you spoke to. They'll check your phone to see if you have any phone calls. They'll check the receipt. They'll look in the car to see if there's any food that you have consumed that you shouldn't have consumed. Anybody want to know anybody you've spoken to. That's if you were out of the house. But imagine being in the house, and it sounds to the uninitiated ridiculous, but it's what's being there's such a wide variety of controlling issues, such as you begin to think it's the norm, and you think that your abuser begins to make you think that you're crazy. So there's a set of rules that the abuser tends to know and change to their whim. So it could be anything from what you're wearing, how you look after your children, when food's on the table, what to eat. If you don't do it the right way, then you suffer the consequences, or you have some other privileges that you previously had taken away from you, and it's a huge.
It's complete loss of control. One person completely controlling someone else.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that when the controller realizes that they've got more privacy than normal, then that control might become violent.
Yeah. Yes. It's been there's a very good researcher called she's Dr. Jane Monckton Smith, who has identified 8 steps that abusers go through, particularly in the run up to, ultimately fatal domestic abuse. And there's a stage, I think it's stage 3 or 4, when it comes with if they suffer a trigger such as before lockdown, that could be anything from losing their job to their partner having a baby, so they don't have so much time for them, or it could be the end of a relationship, or even the death of somebody in the family or an illness. So it means that their daily life, they've lost control of that particular area of their life, and they start to react. Now, to the most of us, we would react in a common sense and a kind way, but then it's just the way, if something that triggers the abuser for whatever reason. The lockdown, their control is really compromised in so many areas. Where they can't go where they want to go, they can't do what they want to do. They're stuck at home they might say, stuck at home with their children not being looked after the way they would want them to be, or taking it out on the children as well, which is really scary. And also, sorry, I was just going to say on the children, even if the family, if it's happening in a family, are known to whatever services, and the children have been designated as being at risk. At the beginning of lockdown, if at-risk children were allowed, allocated, they could still be going to school. But it's been evident that over these few weeks that hardly any places are being taken up by these children. Some areas, it's only no places are being taken up by these children. So it does lead you to wonder what they're experiencing at home.
Oh gosh, that's awful. Because the children at the mercy of the parents actually taking them to school or allowing them to go to school.
Yeah. That, and I was just reading as well, something I hadn't thought of, even in cases where families aren't necessarily together, but the parent, and I would say the particular Refuge, charity Refuge, does term it gender-based abuse, gender-based violence. So we're not just talking about men on women, we're talking men on men or partners on partners. But sometimes the children have been, the parents, say a father has been only allowed access to the children for certain times, maybe weekends, and when lockdown began, some children were with for their limited time with their parent and haven't been able to get back.
Oh gosh.
Things have been happening, so it's been particularly distressing.
Gosh, no, it's really, really awful. And I'm sure it's frustrating for the social services to know that this stuff must be going on and they don't know how to reach these people.
Well, yes, and I say that the services when people are already in touch with the various support services, that is, they really are, they are still there. That's what they want somebody to know, that they're still there to be able to help. but it's the people who think that they have got to, maybe it wasn't too bad before, but now they're at home isolating with someone that they think they can't. The government and the police have said, remember, you can leave in these circumstances, even though the government has said stay home. Obviously, they wouldn't want you to stay home with an abuser. But it's recognising what constitutes abuse. Some people think, oh, I don't want to trouble them with that. This is me feeling really uncomfortable, and this is something. And it's not. It can so easily escalate, as it did in my sister-in-law's case, because she was saying things we didn't know. We didn't realise the warning signs of how she was withdrawing, for example, withdrawing from contact with friends and family, because she felt, because she was, we now know, was being warned off it, erroneously.
So is there any advice for, I mean, I know social services are asking the community to be their eyes and ears. So as you say, there might be people who've not had any contact with social services because they haven't needed it up until this point, but they're over the edge now.
And as to say, it's not, it might frighten some people off if you term it social services, but I would rather call it support services, because they can come, whether it be by a charity or even as the police are very well versed in this now. There's been so much training over the last few years. So anybody that you can go. So trying to get it out there. Yes, it's difficult because we're not seeing, people aren't going to be out and about and being each other. So you might not, for example, realise that a friend or family member are suffering worse than usual. The only thing you might get is through your time talking to them on the phone or social media. And the only other doctor's surgeries are particularly trying to make, and pharmacies are trying to make it really clear that there's help out there.
So if you have anyone in your life that you're at all worried might be vulnerable, you would encourage people just to check in with them.
If they're at all concerned, to call the National Domestic Violence Helpline, which is, I can give the number out, we've got the number later. The person there, that will be directed, the person on the other end will listen to you in total confidence. Now that is obviously not easy when you have a perpetrator in the background. So there are ways of also getting in touch with them online and hiding what you're looking at on screen, and if you're hiding what your history is of what you've been surfing on with your phone.
Okay. And how easy is it for people to find out how to do that?
It's very easy if you go to any of the charity websites, but the one I work with mostly is Refuge. There's obviously Women's Aid, but they're the ones that you can just, even if you surf online, that they very clearly on each page give you an option to hide the page.
Okay, I'm looking at it now, so you can hide the website. Yeah. Okay. That's really good to know. It's unimaginable being in a relationship where you would have to do that, but this is the reality, sadly, for so many people. And what if you're a friend of somebody and you're worried about your friend? Can you call?
You can call it, yes, certainly. You can call as well, and they're very giving advice on how to help the person. Yeah, certainly can. You might even work with the person that you know to give you a sign, even when they're calling you, because you might be someone that the perpetrator trusts, the victim to call.
Yeah.
And you could maybe work with them somehow to give them a sign. So if you say, I mean, there was a wonderful article in The Guardian yesterday, and they suggested to say something like, I'm really needing a pint of milk.
So it has
or something
code word.
And meaning a code word that you means, right, really call, what can you call the police, or you could arrange whatever it was you needed to have. Say, no, I need to get out, will you come? Or something you could put in your window that you've already put, so on daily walks, you know that it's what you've already arranged with that person that they really need help.
Okay.
And you'll be able to get the advice, the helpline, the national helpline will give you advice on how to proceed from there.
Okay. So the number is 0808 2000 24/7.
Yes.
That's 0808 2000 24/7. It's a national helpline, but you might actually get diverted through to a refuge local to you.
Locally to yourself, yes.
Yeah.
Well, advisors, yes.
Yeah.
They're all things in the same kinship.
Okay.
Yeah. And as always, if ever there's an emergency, you call the police.
Yeah.
999. Now, it may be difficult if the perpetrator is there, but you can, if there's something called the silent call facility, that if you don't speak, I think the call operator might prompt you that if you press 5 and then the number 5 twice, they will know that you can't speak and that you are needing help.
Yes.
So, proceed now.
And that is if you're calling on a mobile.
A mobile, yes.
On a landline, you just stay quiet, and
yes.
They will put you through to the police. The difference is apparently they get something like 20,000
silent calls,
fake calls a day
yes.
From mobile phones. So they have to have a system whereby they know it's for real. You are really there, and that's why you press the 55 if you're on the phone. But you will get prompted to do it, and you might be asked to cough or to tap in response if you can't actually speak out loud.
Yes, thank you, Penny. I didn't have this out in front of me, but yes, thankfully I've never had to.
No,
I can't imagine. I mean, in Rachael's case, my sister-in-law, she did call the police. You put your faith in the police. This is why it's one of the reasons I'm campaigning. This is 10 years ago. Things were not as they are now, and the police were. A lot of the police forces were not responding to domestic violence cases or domestic abuse, because it might not have abuse might not have been made evidence in violence or physical violence. It could have been emotional, mental abuse. We're not really sure with Rachel. It could have been some physical, but anyhow, she'd put her faith in the police to call them. She didn't call 999. She did the last time, and she had her ex-partner was downstairs, and she was in the bathroom. Now she'd gone upstairs to the bathroom because she was frightened of what he might do, and she was listened to, and the caller gave her advice. But now it's that she wasn't told, quite made aware of quite what the risk was. In subsequent occasions, she really wasn't. She was listening to the call, and she was really quite distressed. Now I put that nowadays, it's almost universally, I would have thought, across all the police forces. You call the police, and they listen to you. If you're in a position where you can tell them that you're not happy with what's going on downstairs, they understand straight away.
So you've obviously been instrumental in campaigning to get the police training improved on this.
Yes. If it can happen, I mean, if we could change the attitude of one officer just turning up at what they used to some people would have said, oh, as another domestic, and maybe treating it with, he's said that, as in Rachel's case, her partner had threatened her on several occasions, and she'd commented to the police, threatened to kill her, and she was genuinely frightened. That some the police officer at the door, they know that you're frightened, they take it seriously. They understand that, yes, if you can change the mind of one officer, one constable, going to the door and finding that and realising that this could escalate, knowing now that if we can could escalate that, and you could save life, and even save one life. That is,
well, hopefully,
yes.
I mean, hopefully, tragedies like Rachael's have paved the way for so much more sensitivity and priority on this area.
Well, this is it. When tragedies such as Rachael's and Auden's, bless his soul, they make national headlines, and that's what the popular media thrives on. But then it's what happens afterwards, and what happened in the run-up to try and the term that we've learned to loathe is to learn the lessons, lessons learned. And there's a wonderful, who's actually a friend of ours now, Frank Melony. His sister was killed, and his nephew in Newbury. It was after Rachel. I can't remember the date. Anyway, it was 2013, perhaps. He is CEO of a charity that he's started up, which is advocacy after fatal domestic abuse. But he is very eloquent and erudite, and he says, no, lessons have only been learned if you show that the lessons have been learned. You can't.
Otherwise, it's an empty statement.
It's an empty statement, and it's just,
So I know the domestic bill, the domestic abuse bill, has taken a long time to get through Parliament, but hopefully, right in this moment in time, it's gone prioritised right up the list.
It has. It's being debated in. The government are talking about it now, and they have put comments on social media. I've seen on Facebook today they've been publicising what you can do in the event if you're suffering domestic abuse, and what constitutes domestic abuse, because a lot of people think that it's not. I mean, we were of the belief, you hear the term domestic abuse and you think of somebody being physically abused and going through horrendous situations, physical situations, but the insidious nature of domestic abuse and abusers are very clever at hiding it and making you believe that it's something doesn't constitute abuse. Yes, but the domestic abuse bill is back at the at the forefront of the government's concerns, and they are putting measures in place to assure that. I think they already have put extra funding through to the domestic abuse charities to combat this, and as a result of as it's now popularly and always known, lockdown.
Well, I guess if, in a way, something like this, the silver lining, if you could call it that, but finally it's being taken seriously as an issue, perhaps.
Yes, because I mean, the awful statistic that we were not aware of when Rachel was killed is that 2 women a week are killed by a current or ex-partner.
Gosh.
And that figure hasn't changed in 10 years. It was that since Rachel was killed, so that's well over 1,000 now. Probably coming up to 1,000 women at least have been killed by the current or ex-partner. Then that figure doesn't. I don't know the figures for other gender-based violence, but that's horrific enough for me. Now, in the first 4 weeks of lockdown, 16 women have been killed.
Gosh, so it's double.
So it's double.
More than
double.
that.
Yeah, more than double.
Yeah.
And there's been children killed as well, which is it's just awful. It's obviously, yeah.
Let's move on to what we can do to help. It's just so depressing to think about this, but what we can all do to help is to help donate money to Refuge, for example, to help fund their helpline.
Yes, there's Refuge to help fund their helpline. It also, they put some of the fundraising goes into supporting the training and of independent domestic violence advisors, and also to keeping their refuges open. They also distribute or help to distribute funds that raise fundraising to other refuges and other charities, domestic abuse charities, to help across the country.
Okay, so refuge.org.uk.
Yep,
I've got all the information.
They have, yes.
And there is also Berkshire Women's Aid. There's a
Swindon Women's Aid, yes.
Okay. So I've got a post on the Penny Post website which will list all these different organisations that people can support as well. So it's called Staying Safe at Home During Lockdown. I'll just interrupt you there, sorry. Some of the local charities are also accepting donations of women's clothing, clothing, toys, books, anything for the families that have had to unfortunately flee home. And I know in the ideal world it would be the perpetrator who'd be forced to leave home, but in reality I can't imagine that's an easy option.
It's something that the government are trying to to get around at the moment, because it would seem logical, wouldn't it? It shouldn't be the victim that should have to leave.
But then you've got to control that predator and stop them going back. So yes, difficult, just awful situation.
Something else that Refuge is doing, because Refuge were the first charity to get in touch with us after we lost Rachael and Auden, and we've been helping them out by publicising the situation. But something else that Refuge have been fundraised for are for you to send money to buy a support parcel for women and families who are having to leave home.
Okay.
In this time, so to help, because they arrive with nothing. No toiletries. Sometimes it's the safest thing to know, because if one of the things, for example, if you make preparations to leave, I mean, even without it being locked down, if you start to squirrel away or have a bag packed or something, but if you're home, that you could, if the perpetrator's there all the time, he's going to know, or saying he, and not necessarily has to be he, that you're planning. What are you trying to do? So you just have to take the opportunity. We're just going out on a daily walk.
And it's better to walk out empty-handed with nothing than to prepare, and you might trigger a response. Yeah. Lovely. Well, I don't know why I said lovely, Melony, because it's not lovely at all. It's lovely for you to spend your time talking to me, and I know this is so close to your heart, and anything we can do to help spread the word.
It's not nice. It's a taboo subject. If you knew that, it's ironic with the coronavirus, COVID-19 around. If you knew people were being killed every week by that, you would be concerned if it's a woman too. But if it's something that you feel a way you could do something about. There isn't a there isn't a vaccine for COVID-19, but there is a way of spreading awareness and talking, opening up and talking about it. There's also, I'd just like to say that there is a movement afoot called, I think, I have to maybe correct you if I've not got it right, but it's called Isolated Not Alone, to let people know that they're not alone even in these strange times.
Absolutely. Well, okay, thank you, Melony, so much. So refuge.org.uk is, and there are lots of other places, organisations there just desperately wanting to help anybody in need, and encouragement, if you're worried about a neighbour, whether they're an adult, a vulnerable adult or a child, is please notify the services. You won't get into trouble. Nobody's going to think you're a busybody. It's much better to make the call and be wrong than not make it if you were right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for talking to us today, Melony.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for taking the time to being your concern.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.